Once again, welcome back to the Strange Show. I'm Hugo Strange, and I know I've been doing a lot of these. I promise regular videos will be coming soon, but until then, it's Hannibal time. Season 2 had just wrapped up Friday, and I think the old saying needs to be changed from "Hell hath no fury like a woman" to "Hell hath no fury like Hannibal scorn," because holy crap. I mean, you want to talk about like finales. This was the kind of finale that like murders your family, takes $20 out of your wallet and kicks your puppy on the way out. This was monstrous, and joining me to talk about this season of Hannibal and just all things Hannibal in general, you all know her, Emily Sofia.
What's up?
First of all, before we get started, congratulations on graduating.
Thank
Well
you very
done there. Great
much.
stuff. So this means we'll be seeing a lot more of you here on YouTube?
Yes, I dare say so. With the way my current job situation is working out, I'll have plenty of time for YouTube-ness, and I definitely plan on expanding the channel. So I'm really excited. I'm excited to finally really have the time to hone in on what I'm doing because you get into not really a funk, but you're just kind of in the groove, reviewing, but looking to add more shows and more music as well.
And I can only imagine what that's going to be. I can say that I am enchanted and terrified.
That's a good one.
So, I don't know how we're going to segue into this. There's a lot of laughing, but I don't think any of us
Oh,
were laughing at the at the finale here. But I
oh
don't want to
man.
like go from 0 to 60 and like jump on the finale right away. I want to like start with
Right.
the season as a whole.
Yeah, it almost feels like it was two different seasons jammed together, you know?
Yes,
Because it
yes.
was the pre or not pre-prison, that was like season one, but the mid-prison season and then the post-prison season, which sees the flowering of the Hannibal Will bromance and then what ultimately transpires. But it's so much to take in. Like, I feel like I need to go back and watch all the early episodes again because I'm suffering some like amnesia right now, just trying to remember where all we've been.
Yes, this show is definitely one of those that you kind of pick up in hindsight. Like I can tell you in the finale, it felt like seeing a very old magic trick and like knowing how it's done.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like that when we got to the finale and just going back and looking at all the little subtle hints that Hannibal was dropping throughout, and even the iconography and what
Oh
that
yeah.
was pointing to. And I was just like, all of that kind of came to bear at the finale. But like you
Mm-hmm.
said, it was almost like watching two different seasons. So this season, we have Will in prison, and it pretty much picks up basically where season 1 ended, with Will in prison. He is the Chesapeake Ripper, or not the Chesapeake Ripper, but rather a copycat Ripper, and he's facing charges. There's a court case, and that's it. Now, the question here, and you and I can go back and forth on this, is why do you think Hannibal put Will in that position?
In the first place.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. It's so like, the craziest part about watching this show and this season in general was, every time I would do a vlog and I would kind of, I'd get in as much analysis as my brain could muster and then, reaction as well. And in the comments, people just would duke it out over what Hannibal's intentions are supposed to be. People are so just they viciously guard their theories about Hannibal works this way and this is what he meant. And then somebody else comes in and they're like, no, 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 clearly you've got this guy all wrong. It's like, who are we to say that we understand exactly how he works?
Especially with how the finale went, but continue.
Yeah, no, like that was, I love this show, and in general it was a lot of fun, to be reviewing it, but I have to say some people were just like, "Oh no, no, no." You don't know this man like I do, and I'm like, "Okay, sorry about that." I mean, I think that maybe in a broad sense, it's kind of a power play where Hannibal exercises his power and shows that he's on top, but he kind of goads Will on to see just how far Will is willing to go. Um, in terms of, because he knows that there is a side of Will that is resistant to what he wants, and then there is a side of Will that responds to Hannibal's darkness. And so putting him in this truly desperate situation in which Hannibal knows that Will needs him, but at the same time Will is trying to eliminate him, I think it's just genuinely exciting for him. And then we see later on, once Will is free, that excitement kind of turns into an intimacy with them as well. Where Will, they're openly talking about how Will wants to murder Hannibal, like with his hands, and this is exactly how I picture it going down. And Hannibal kind of smirks, like, "Oh, that's kind of sweet." But yeah, so to me, like, at this point, without having rewatched the earlier episodes and my memory being a little bit fuzzy, I think that I would say that it's kind of a power play, letting Will's imagination play, and then Hannibal doing the same, and ultimately coming out on top.
I
So
I would definitely agree with that, especially the part about the power play. But there are several moments, but one moment in particular just kind of really. There are moments here where we don't pick up on Hannibal's vulnerability
yeah,
and how much he really loves Will. And I say the word love, and I do mean love, but
uh-huh,
in a way only Hannibal could. And I think that's why he put him in prison, in order to see things from his perspective. But in the first season, Hannibal's in his office and he's just kind of sitting around looking at the clock, and he opens the waiting room door and no one's there. And he just kind of looks around and he has this look on his face, that this expectant, like, puppy look, like, where's
oh my
Will?
gosh, I remember that exact scene, and there were so many people on like Tumblr and places who were talking about that scene in the context of like, all by myself. Like,
But
and that was totally what it was. I died because it's like, man, he really is lonely.
yeah, it's and he actually goes to Will and he says, hey, there's still time for your appointment, and
Yeah.
in so many ways, hey, I miss you, come hang out with me, sort of.
Yeah.
And it's just this weird kinship that they have, that they can't grasp, that no one can really put a label on it, because they hate each other. Well, I think Will hates Hannibal, clearly. I don't think Hannibal
Hmm.
hates Will. I don't even think he does after the finale. I think
I agree.
he's hurt, and that's the sticking point here, is that he's hurt,
Yep.
and that's weird. but
Yes.
but yeah, so there is this weird friendship, like you said. They're talking about how Will plans to murder him, and they're just casually talking about it. If it's just like, hey, what do you want to eat? It's like, yeah, do you plan to kill me again? Yeah, I'm not gonna kill you. It's like, really? And then so there's this moment where the two of them do have this kind of simpatico moment where um Will kind of predicts that Hannibal's going to send Randall Tier after him,
Hmm.
the Robo Bear, or whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
And Hannibal comes home and finds Randall Tier laid out on his dining room table, and Will's like, "Okay, we're even." And Hannibal just gives a nod, like, well played, well done.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, that
okay,
was
we're officially friends now.
yep. I see how much I really mean to you. But yeah, because when you think about it, I mean, unless I'm recalling this in the wrong way, I mean, Will didn't have to bring Randall to Hannibal
No,
per se. He could have just dealt with him and then told Hannibal that the deed was done. But the fact that he brings, it's sort of like when a cat shows up at your back door and like, hey, look what I got for you. That was almost kind of, in sort of a joking sense, the way that maybe Hannibal kind of saw that gesture. But yeah, because Will could have kept that from him and to himself and thus, kept space between them, but he
exactly.
really let things become intimate in that way. And so Hannibal wouldn't have expected, the whole Freddie Lowndes reveal when he thought that they were they were having a little ginger together. Like he wouldn't have expected that based on the precedence of Will doing these murderous acts in his presence or showing in the aftermath. So it's really brilliant when you think about it on
Indeed.
on Will's
Indeed.
part. Yeah.
Indeed. It's brilliant and it's haphazard because at the same
Yes.
time, Will is constantly like, in the finale, there's always this bleak moment where he's like, I don't know if I can actually catch him. And
Mm-hmm.
even Jack and Alana, they're just like, can you do this?
Yeah.
Can you get this guy? And Will's like, I honestly don't know. I couldn't tell you. And it was those moments that just showed how deep Hannibal's manipulation is and how far the rabbit hole went because with the fact that Miriam Lass was alive this whole
Yeah.
time, that kind of showed that Hannibal was in it for the long con. As Will said, he was always going to reveal her. He was always saving her for
Mm-hmm.
this moment. And then when it's revealed that Dr. Chilton was quote unquote the Chesapeake Ripper,
Yeah.
it all played out and Will's like, this is my design. This is how he planned it. This is all laid out and
Yeah.
it's insane. And I guess me and several other viewers were stupid to actually think that we could bet against the king in the finale and
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, I know that Brian Fuller has openly said that he has no problem with having the show go in the direction of Hannibal being in prison. So part of you is like, maybe, just maybe. The
right.
show is called Hannibal, and thus he's likely going to be in it in the flesh throughout the series. But, sort of like with, we even put Will in prison for almost the entire first half of the season. He's not the
Exactly.
titular character, but he's one of the main players. So there's part of you that's like, this might just possibly, but to get a sense of smell on that guy.
Yeah.
Ugh. Oh man, that was such an eerie scene when he catches the scent of Freddie on Will because Will had just gone to meet with her, and how she was like painted completely red and sort of
Yeah.
looks up and it's just like, oh man, game over.
Yeah. I was hoping and even Hannibal at that point was giving Will the benefit of the doubt, I do believe.
Yeah.
Like if he really suspected, he could have just gutted him there. And
Mm-hmm.
even then, and we'll get to the finale.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
there,
Sorry to keep.
no, that's cool because it's coming up because all of the little hints and clues and everything just kind of folds back in. But we'll work to that. Um, what I do want to touch on is the introduction of the Verger twins.
Yeah.
Margot and Mason played fantastically by Michael Pitt.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
if he doesn't win something for that, I'm gonna cry foul.
Yeah, that was. I mean, everyone said it, so I'm not particularly original in saying this, but he's kind of that Heath Ledger Joker in the
Exactly,
series.
and Brian Fuller has gone on record as saying that he is the Joker to
Mm-hmm.
Hannibal's Batman, and we
Yeah.
see it in the way they interact with each other, and they're two sides of the same coin. You look at Hannibal, his suits are very fine, he's very streamlined, nothing too gaudy. And you look at Mason, and the first time we see him, he's wearing a fur coat holding a pig, and his hair is just all over the place. I mean,
Oh yeah.
he's one of the richest people who can't afford a comb, and why would he? You know?
Yeah, it's a perpetual bedhead going on.
Exactly. And he just has this flair about everything with him is just this flair and just boisterous and loud. And Hannibal's just very quiet and subdued. And he has this flair in the kitchen. But even then, it's like, it's not, look at me. It's this, I'm doing this for me. And
Hmm.
seeing those two play off of each other. And one of the most hilarious moments in this series is just watching Hannibal's reaction to Mason's rudeness.
Oh my gosh. Because again, it's so ridiculously subtle, but I feel like all of us have become so tuned into Mads Mikkelsen's facial expressions that we're just like, oh, can you see the seething hatred? And it's just
Yes!
like his eyebrow moves a millimeter, and we're all like, oh man.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the first time when Mason, not the first time, but when Mason comes into the office and he lays down on the chair and starts
Oh,
extolling his
that's
wife.
the first party foul.
And Hannibal's like, Mason, the chair, please. And he gets up and he leaves the jacket, and Hannibal's like, not gonna pick up that jacket, are you? Okay.
Yeah, you just
Alrighty.
we see the line of sight just like, oh.
Okay, that jacket. All right. And then I think one of the worst, or at least the second to the worst, is when Mason's going through his drawings and he's like, ah, garbage. Ah, this one.
Oh man. Yeah,
You
you know
just
what's funny is I thought about that scene. I mean, it's not really related in any way, but I was thinking about Miriam Lass when she was looking at his
yes.
drawings in the office. And I was like, do you not see, like, how in any way, who would think it's even remotely decent to just waltz into somebody's personal space and just like, oh, this is trash. Like, oh, what were you thinking decorating this way? It's like,
Yeah, it's
oh
for
yeah.
sure. So obviously, if we all know the Hannibal mythos here, and spoiler alert for anyone who isn't familiar with the Hannibal mythos, um, we know Mason Verger becomes a really huge player later on. Um,
Yep.
and it was just interesting how they got to that place, because in the movie, the character Margot is not present at all.
No.
And that's really unfortunate. But in here, and they did tweak her character because in the books she's a bit more butch, and in
Yeah,
here
that's what
she,
I heard. I
yeah,
actually hadn't read it, but
yeah, it's there, but it's not there. And Catherine Elizabeth, of course, fantastic job as Margot Verger, and you can just see just how worn she is with this, and her relation to Will almost harkened that of, dare I say, Abigail, sort of, in a
mm-hmm.
sense where both Hannibal and Will has formed an attachment with this woman and is kind of egging her on to do something to kill her brother, even
Yeah.
though Margot knows that she gets nothing if Mason dies.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. And I think that's the parallel here, is that Hannibal talks, well, not Hannibal, but Will talks about how Hannibal's attempting to foster codependency with himself
Yeah.
by removing everything from Will's life, and we find out that's not the case at all. But
No.
from just looking at what we just saw with the baby being aborted, and Margot being essentially rendered barren, uh, one would think that Hannibal was trying to be the center of Will's world.
Mm-hmm.
So would you say there is a parallel between Margot and Abigail in that sense, where both of them have kind of rallied their support around her?
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I hadn't actually considered that before, but now that you mention it, I can definitely see that. It's really funny too how just in general, both Hannibal and Will, they form these relationships with the same woman. Like you could even I don't think that Alana parallels as much to kind of the Margot and Abigail situation, but they
Not at all.
do keep sharing these women,
Exactly,
you know?
exactly. And that's the curious thing about this is that there's women in the center of their worlds, but at the center of their worlds is them.
Yep.
It's how they relate to them and how they're responsible for these people almost. In the
Hmm.
same way that Will is responsible for Alana. She comes over his house and he gives her the gun and he says, if when you're scared, use it. Don't be afraid
Yeah.
to use it. And there's this trust, and I think that was made clear in the dinner scene when Alana's just looking at both Will and Hannibal, and she's like, "I don't know what's going on with you two," and they're like, "Well, we know, so it's good."
Yep.
And it's like that's how it is with everything. Like from the very first episode, that's how it was with Abigail, where Will felt ultimately responsible for along with Hannibal, and it's just weird how those parallels work. That
Yeah.
they're always together, and that was that weird Hannibal, Will, Alana, Wendigo foursome
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
acid trip sex scene was. It was that
Hmm.
one is always present with the other, and they're never going to get away from that.
Yeah.
Those two will always have each other, and that I think that's the scary thing going into the third season is that a little piece of each other, a little piece of them have been left with each other. Um,
Yeah.
so with that being said, we're going to move into the finale. And before we do that, I want to talk about the metaphor of the Shiva Wendigo, which I think has been explained throughout the entire season. Now seeing it as a whole, so Shiva, as Hannibal has said ad nauseum, is both destroyer and benefactor. And we've seen Hannibal do this throughout the season where he gives back life. He gave Jack Merriam. He gave Chilton uh Dr. Gideon, even though Dr. Gideon was dead. He
Yep.
gave Dr. Gideon back. He
And he
gave
gave, yeah, Bella back to
Yes,
Jack.
he gave
Yeah.
Bella back to. Yes, so there's this strong theme of these resurrections and these the giving of life and the taking of life and the murder and the mercy, like they said with Mason Verger, murder or mercy. And so
Hmm.
then when Hannibal and Will have that very quiet conversation that I think was the most genuine moment between the two, where Will is regretting how how Abigail it might as well be Hannibal.
Yeah.
Abigail was taken from him, and Hannibal just says, "I'm very sorry I did that to you."
Yeah.
And then in the finale, we find out she's been alive this whole time, and
Yep.
that he was saving her for Will. Like I was going to surprise you with her.
As a gift.
What was that moment like? Because I don't think anybody, and I mean anybody, we all speculated on how the finale would end. Maybe Hannibal would feed Alana to Will, maybe he would feed Bella to Jack, or maybe something else gruesome would happen. But I don't think anybody ever like imagined a world or a possibility that Abigail might be alive.
Oh yeah. I there was a lot of people on my channel who speculated that she was still alive. And I mean, I think that you can speculate with almost anyone who doesn't die literally on screen. You
Of
can
course.
speculate that anybody's coming back. And that's just kind of the way that the show operates. And I mean, my sort of realism brain is always kind of engaged like, okay, legitimately, how could this person even still be a component in this. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, because Abigail continued to come up in their discussions, and even in Will's imagination at the beginning when he'd do his like mental fly fishing in the
Right.
prison, so she was still kind of this undercurrent in this thread between them because there was such a powerful tie. But honestly, I thought that she was gone, and I should have known better because we've seen many times in this season, especially, that if somebody doesn't kick the bucket in front of you on the screen, somebody checks the pulse and oh, there's nothing, they must be gone. Then there's still that possibility. And the fact that it was really brilliant the way that they brought Abigail back too when
Indeed.
Hannibal in his blood-stained shirt is just walking up just coolly up the stairs after Abigail who's trying to reload her gun, and then the camera kind of turns, and we're expecting to see Hannibal right behind her, and then of course it's Abigail. And I like jumped out of my chair
I think
at
we all
that
did.
moment. Yeah, and my brother was watching with me, and I just like I, I just looked over at him and I was like, "This isn't happening." And oh man, it was really really brilliant and just horrible.
Indeed. Indeed it was.
uh,
It,
yeah.
it, it was that moment where you realize that Hannibal's been in control this whole time. Like,
Oh
it
yeah.
was, it was game over right there. I was just like, wow.
Hmm.
He, like, conned everybody. Cause, like, even when he let Will go, like, he laid out the evidence and released Will from prison, all
Yeah.
of that was Hannibal's doing. Again, that metaphor of destroyer and benefactor.
Yeah.
And it all came like full circle at the end when Hannibal destroys Abigail. The one thing that Will hated Hannibal for doing, that Hannibal was going to be the benefactor and give back to him,
Hmm.
he destroyed it.
Yeah. And it's just crazy to see how, like you said, Hannibal has been in control throughout the entirety of everything, but that he maintains that control even when things don't meet his typically like divine expectations. He has a way of just knowing everything, but he was legitimately betrayed, and I think on some level surprised by what Will did to him, but he still maintained that control because
Yes.
before he was orchestrating this beautiful escape for them, the two of them and Abigail, and then he turned it into this massacre, but he still maintained control even when his expectations were subverted. And that's what's scary.
Yeah, I think the cool thing about Hannibal is the fact that I remember them saying it somewhere in season one or something, that he doesn't really have a game plan exactly. He just kind
Mm-hmm.
of like you said, I was curious. I wanted to see what would happen. And
Yeah.
he kind of looks at it's so weird. Like he's in the situation, but he's looking at it from afar and he sees the big
Yeah.
picture. He sees where it's going and he's like, how can I work this to my advantage?
Mm-hmm.
And somehow he does, or he has the foresight in terms of the Miriam Last Dr. Chilton situation
Yeah.
to foresee that this could end very bad for me. If they find her, I better work fast here.
Yeah.
And how he did that, how he conned Will into questioning his sanity, and
Mm-hmm.
Will, even, after having his encephalitis cured and having just his clearest moments where he is remembering all of this, not even Will at his best could match Hannibal.
Yeah.
And that's upsetting because I think that it's that lack of a fine-tuned plan, but like that ability to see everything, because Will couldn't see everything as much as Hannibal was telling him and telling us the
Mm-hmm.
teacup metaphor, and there may be a place for Abigail in your world, and what place would that be? and
Yep.
just all of this subtext being laid on the table. And it took us till now to see through all of it. And
Mm-hmm.
that genuine hurt on Hannibal's face when he's like, "You would deny me my freedom? You would take that from me? I gave you a rare gift." And I, I was almost certain they edited out a part where Hannibal's like, "I freaking loved you, man."
Yeah.
Like that's what it was. It was this
Yeah.
this hurt and betrayal of like friends, and it's just weird because you feel sorry for him, but at the same time, it's like you're a terrible person.
Yeah. It's that just complete and utter cognitive dissonance that pretty much is the experience of watching this show.
Yeah, it's been
Uh,
it's been an experience. So with season 2 ending the way it has, and Brian Fuller in an interview said that season 3 was going to be there's going to be much more Hannibal,
mm-hmm.
a little less FBI, and he was going to be borrowing pages from Hannibal Rising and
Mm-hmm.
Hannibal the movie.
Yeah. But he did say that they're going to be it might have been that same interview, I'm not sure, but he said that they were dramatically altering the Hannibal Rising story.
Yes, yes.
And I think that's a good thing.
You and me both, and I don't think many people would disagree with you on that. As
Yeah,
long as they keep the cheeks, because the cheeks are the best part. Ask Mason
right.
Verger, nod to the screen. Because he was feeding his cheeks to the dog, and Hannibal Rising cheeks is the best part. Uh, so what I'm thinking for season 3, because I think Fuller has gone on record as saying season 4 was going to cover events of Red Dragon, even
Mm-hmm.
though we might get glimpses of Francis Dollarhide in season 3, maybe, hopefully.
Yeah.
I'm hoping for that, and if their casting's as good as Michael Pitt as Mason Verger, I will just pollute my trousers with delight. Um, so
Right.
we have a lot of things laid out, and I don't know if you caught this. I definitely did because I saw Hannibal Rising. I'm pretty sure a lot of people have. In Hannibal's room, or at least in one of his rooms, you see the samurai gear,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I was like, oh, okay, so they are doing that. And he does mention his aunt Mirazaki, I think her name was.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're keeping those elements in there,
Yeah.
but and there has been mention of Misha,
Mm-hmm.
which is fantastic.
Yeah.
It put Hannibal in a very vulnerable place, bringing her up and relating her to Abigail, and that also raises another point of not point of contention, but another thing to note in the finale. But where would you think where do you think they could take this particular Hannibal's origins?
That's a great question. I mean, yeah, because there was I knew that I'd even heard from an interview with Thomas Harris that he and I don't know if this was an exaggeration, but that he like wished that he hadn't written Hannibal Rising. Like that he just straight up wished that he hadn't tried to go there in the Hannibal lore. And so that's kind of interesting, because as a reader or as a viewer, you want to be able to feel like you and the author are kind of having this experience together. And
Right.
then the fact that he's like, oh, I don't think I should have gone there, you're kind of like, oh wow. It sort of takes you back and you're like, where do you want to go? Because the thing that can be dicey about origin stories for these crazy serial killers is that you almost run the risk of like trying to spoil like the inexplicable, or I don't really know how to even say it,
No, I
but
think you hit the nail
sometimes
on the head.
yeah, because it's like if you dally too, and I think that I had seen an interview with Mads Mikkelsen where he was kind of like, he is just basically God and that was his conception of Hannibal, and that it's not necessarily a nature nurture, what happened to make him this way, but that maybe he's just so transcendent that you can't go far back enough to figure out where it began.
Yeah, he said in an interview that he plays Hannibal more like the fallen angel Lucifer, where
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of observing, he's among humans, but he's observing them.
Yes.
And he's not really a part of it. And he does play that quite a bit throughout the entire series, where he is kind of this shark, just kind of circling around everybody, and everybody's kind of aware of him, but they're not aware of him like, yo, that's a shark. And Will is the only person who's
Mm-hmm.
like, yo, that's a shark. We should be running. And it's like, no, Hannibal's harmless. And in the finale, Hannibal's like, now that you know me, see me, like,
Mm-hmm.
this is who I am. I did this. And
Yep.
it is that, like you said, that God moment, that glorious, transcendent moment where Hannibal does have his godly speech where, I gave you a rare gift and you would deny
Mm-hmm.
me my freedom and this, that, and he took away the thing that Will loved, laid waste to all his friends and pretty much his family,
Yeah.
and he just waltzes out of there like nothing ever happened, and he's on a plane and with Dr. de Maurier, raises a
Mm-hmm.
whole lot of questions there that
Oh yeah.
I
Oh
don't even think
yeah.
we could get to in a single podcast. But
Yep.
who is she? Because at first she's afraid of him, and then she is sort of spilling the beans on what happened between her and that quote unquote patient. And
Mm-hmm.
then she says something that I don't think a lot of people have addressed, that she said, he will make you hurt someone you love. And I'm like, did that happen to her?
Yeah.
And was that patient that someone she loved?
Mm-hmm.
Did Hannibal manipulate her into that moment where she killed someone that she loved, and it was, like she said, the only thing you could do?
Mm-hmm.
This guy's level of manipulation and power, I mean, when you can convince a man to eat his own leg, the
Yep.
cat's basically like out of the bag. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can't you can't stand up against this guy, and like Abel Gideon said, he's the devil, he's smoke, and you're never gonna catch him.
Yeah.
And it raises a lot of questions as to how they're going to catch him, because
Yeah.
by Red Dragon we know Hannibal's behind bars, but
Mm-hmm.
after this, I mean, how?
Yeah. It's like, what is it going to take? Because
Yes.
we see this crazy, convoluted, and very volatile, but at the same time very crafty scheme to catch him, and it almost worked. But
Almost.
almost. I mean, there's still a lot of debate as to where things went off rails, but it's kind of like we said, the whole adaptability feature of Hannibal, that that doesn't really help much for anybody who's trying to catch him. But
Exactly.
yeah, I'm very curious to see how much bigger can this show get. That's the
Yes.
question, because this season just felt huge in terms of not even just the story, but the cinematography and the way that everything was laid out. It was just so. The show felt like a drug trip for
Yes.
almost the entire last half of the season. And I mean, we all kind of were in this like sort of Mason Verger place of, the I just think of that scene where he is tripping serious balls, and I definitely felt that way myself,
Oh yeah,
trying to see
we were
things
all
from the different
there.
characters' perspectives. But it's just like, I don't even know. The opera just keeps getting more and more dramatic.
Yes, and
But
I like the fact that you said it was an opera, because that's exactly what this is. Everything's
Mhm.
over the top and exaggerated to high hell, and it's very like tragic. It's very Shakespearean
Oh
in a
yeah.
sense. It's very Hamlet.
Oh
It's
yes, very much so.
it's just very like emotions are not like the quiet moments where they're talking, no vocal inflection in their voice, and it's just the most tense stuff in the and some of the best stuff in the series, dare
Yeah.
I say, where they're just sitting down talking and you listen to the dialogue, you listen to the metaphors, you listen to what they're saying, how they're saying it, why they're saying it, who's playing who, and it's this really frustrating and passive aggressive cerebral chess match that no one's really quite sure who's winning until the very end, and then Hannibal's
Yep.
like, ah, yeah, checkmate.
By the
And you're
way.
like, wait, what? What? When did, how, and who, what?
Yep.
Oh man, whew.
Yeah, and it's the thing that was craziest to me to realize with that truly bombastic ending was that I mean, it really was coming all along. And of course, we knew that because at the very, very beginning of the entire season, we
Yes,
see the fight scene with Hannibal
yes,
and Jack. And so it was no secret that things were going to go to hell in a handbasket. But at the same time, there's a line that for some reason was really impactful to me when in the finale when Will and Alana were talking, and Alana was talking about her dreams about the darkness and how she felt like she had been poisoned, and then Will said, you know, we've all been poisoned by Hannibal. So you almost think that, you know, the way that everyone, well, quote unquote, dies or almost dies, or it's hard to say who's actually going to make it out alive, but even though these things happen in like the last 10 minutes of the entire season, it's almost like the natural progression of all their interactions and everything they experienced with Hannibal just being in his presence. If that
yeah.
makes any sense. You know, you
No,
think
no,
about
that,
someone being poisoned and it just diffuses, and then it was manifested in the end as all these everyone's pretty much bleeding out.
yeah,
But yeah, so I was just kind of thinking about that as my mind is trying to wrap itself around what exactly I just watched.
yeah. There was this looming sense of dread and doom the whole time there, and we saw, like you said, at the very beginning of this season, we saw the all out brawl between Jack and Hannibal, but we didn't know how bad it was going to get. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we saw Jack get stabbed in the throat, but we didn't know Alana was going to show up. We didn't know Abigail was alive. We didn't know Will was going to get damn near disemboweled. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was far worse than any of us could have imagined. And the fact that Fuller, like, told us ahead of time, like, this is where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to show you, and you're going to think you know. And then when
But
you
you
get there, yeah,
don't.
you're gonna be like, holy crap, what was going on? And just the way Hannibal was just putting on the coat and just walking through the rain, and I'm pretty sure me and other people were just sitting there like, okay, just don't go to the credits, don't go to the credits, don't. And then they went to the credits, and I'm like,
Yep.
he got away.
Yeah, I was furious at that moment until just that last little snippet of the plane scene that we got. Just because I was just so hungry for like 10 seconds beyond that ending. Because it was just too much. And I was like, I am not going to sit on this for a year. It is going to swallow me whole.
I was expecting like Hannibal would be walking, and then you'd hear a gunshot, and he would just like stop, and you'd realize
Yeah.
he had been shot, he falls down, and then it's like fade to black.
Yep.
Where it's like everybody like gets it. And then for this to happen, I was just like, oh wow, okay. This got
And I mean,
really dark.
and he steps outside over Alana, who is dying right in front of his house,
Yes,
and he's just got his face upturned to the rain like he's taking a shower.
yes, it was this rebirth. This I'm
Mm,
free, I can walk away from this, and
yep.
he's going off to his new life, and it's
Uh,
it was just insane. as we all know, for those of you who saw the Hannibal movie, um, Hannibal ends up in Italy under the guise of Dr. Phil. Maybe we might see that persona in here, and of course, the Vergers had Italians working for them. We might see them attempting to get revenge for poor Matteo who didn't make it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that may be something we might see in season 3. I'm thinking because Italy, he was in Italy. I did go back and rewatch that movie. Um,
And I heard that they were filming in France, though.
that would be cool.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm excited. At least they won't be stuck in like where were they? They were up in Canada filming the second season. It
Right.
was just it was this eternal winter the entire time, and I guess I heard that they just had a really bad winter because I was like, what is the time frame of what we're watching here? But
It
yeah,
worked for the color scheme though.
it really did. It really did.
And we could do a whole podcast on just the colors alone, but
Oh yeah.
everything in this show is just a mind game. Like it literally is, and I love that. It is that frustrating game of chess that you're constantly trying to unravel, and it's only going to get deeper in the third season.
Mm-hmm.
One thing though I have to say is that they need to stop jerking us around with Will's dogs.
Oh my god. That is the thing that sets me off like nobody's business. Every time he comes up to his house, and then there's just that moment of, okay, or one of the dogs comes out and is like whimpering, and you're just like, did they know? No. I
Yeah,
can't.
it's always Winston. Like
I
when the Verger face scene was going on, Winston was outside and he's like, dude, I I tried to stop it. I told them not to, but like I can't even
know. Oh
tell you. You just
man.
gotta come in and see. And like, cause with Randall Tier going after Will's dogs, and I'm just like, no, not you. You mess with the man's dog.
Yeah,
That's why
that's
he
where
killed
we
you.
draw the line. Like, kill off whoever you want, human wise, expendable. But the dogs, that's like where our humanity is. That's the only place where we can really invest it in this show.
Well, Will loves his dogs, and I
Yeah.
was thinking he was gonna get like more dogs after the whole Margot situation went down, but
Oh, yeah.
he didn't. But still, it's just that where it's just like Will comes in and he's like, "What are you feeding to my dogs?" And he just has that look, that that like,
His face in that entire sequence of just, I am remaining as physically calm as possible.
it's one of those things where he kind of like sees just how deep Hannibal can take this, how
Yeah.
powerful Hannibal is, and he just that expression, all of the masks he's put on with Hannibal has just dropped there, and he's like, "What is going on?"
Yeah. It's just that
Oh my
moment of
goodness.
maybe I really am insane.
Yeah, and so Mason Verger obviously doesn't turn Hannibal in. Mason Verger is of course a big player.
Yeah.
Um, Now, according to Brian Fuller, they haven't so far gotten the ability to use
Yes.
Clarice Starling. I'm
Hmm.
hoping they don't. I really didn't care for Clarice.
Yeah, I think that in the context of this show, I could live without her being in it. If they weren't able to do that, like, I've been so much more compelled by the Will Hannibal relationship, for
Exactly.
one thing, that it doesn't seem as necessary as perhaps it once did when we all fell in love with Silence of the Lambs for the first time. But
Exactly.
I don't think they have to. If they can't do it, they'll come up with other things.
Yeah, that's definitely what I'm leading what I'm trying to get the conversation to go to is that if say another female character was introduced in place of Clarice, do you
Hmm.
think that would ruin the Will Hannibal dynamic? Do you see the show moving past Will?
See, that's the my tongue is just like sticking out my teeth. That's the thing that's tough for me because I was trying to make predictions about who I thought was gonna die at the end, and I was like, okay, they could get rid of Jack. I mean, it's possible. It doesn't sound like Jack and Will are going away though. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, and then Alana and well, I obviously didn't see Abigail coming, but I was almost sure
Yeah.
that Alana was gonna kick it. And yeah, but as far as another female character, it just really depends on how they play it. Because yeah, I never imagined just how into the whole Will Hannibal thing I was gonna get. You know, we weren't even nearly as compelled by what was happening with Hannibal and Alana, except at like maybe the very beginning. Well, because what was weird about
Hmm.
that is Alana came on to him, at least from my
Yes.
perspective. So it was kind
Yes.
of different. Whereas, like with kind of a Clarice relationship, Hannibal's kind of coming on to, you know, that figure, and so that's what I guess what would make it interesting is if they had a Clarice like figure, because this totally green girl who, like, because Will, he kind of came equipped with some sort of social, mental kind of issues. And so Hannibal got to play with those. But say you just have a person who's pretty much, I mean, Clarice did have some past traumas that Hannibal ended up playing on, but I don't know. I don't freaking know. They can do what they want. I think it could be interesting, but I almost don't want them to have to move on beyond Will, even though they could.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the same place you are with that because I've
Yeah.
always, in the grand scope of the Hannibal mythos, I've always looked to Will Graham as his ultimate adversary because
Yeah.
Will Graham is essentially the guy who puts him away and the guy who understands Hannibal the most,
Yep.
essentially. So, and as much as I enjoyed Silence of the Lambs and Hannibal the movie, I really didn't quite understand Hannibal's fascination with Clarice, other
Yeah.
than ooh, a new toy. Um,
Right.
so, and with the way this series is going, is that the bond and the friendship between Will and Hannibal, going back to the finale, where Hannibal actually looks at Will and says, "I forgive you."
Mhm.
And I think he actually meant it, which is weird.
Yeah. Like I understand. I get
Like,
it.
I don't know how or why I get it, but I get it when he says, "I forgive you. Now do you forgive me?" And it's like,
Mhm.
I hate to sound sexist, but it's almost that woman thing where it's like, "I forgive you. Now I'm gonna bring this up for the next 5 or 6 years to remind you of what you did wrong to me, but
Yep.
that I forgive you and you need to make this right," sort of thing.
Yes.
And when he just kills Abigail, and even though he said, "I forgive you," and he leaves Will dying, even though I don't think Hannibal was planning on killing him, I think
Mhm.
he wanted Will to live just so he could suffer.
Yeah.
And again, that's just like the Bella situation where it was weird, but letting her live was the worst thing he could have possibly done.
Yeah. And like she had said to him in that last scene they had in the finale, like, I died and I'm between deaths, you know?
Yeah. You took away my period, or something like that.
Yeah,
And
you moved
yes,
the punctuation, or you moved my meaning, I think is kind of what it was along the lines of.
yes. So yeah.
Ugh.
Well, the third season is usually the hardest to get through. That's usually when a show can really prove its roots and really step forward, come out the gates swinging. And I hope they just maintain what they're doing, because this is phenomenal. I've never been, excuse me, more impressed with a show since Breaking Bad, and
Yeah.
I hope they maintain the cleverness of this, and I hope that, excuse me, that whatever origin they have for Hannibal
Mm-hmm.
it it leaves for room that inexplicability of
Yeah.
his actual being.
Right, that it doesn't come down to the nature nurture combo, but that
Yes.
there's something else that you can't quite attain because that's kind of the brilliance of it and the
Yes.
scariness.
Yes. And the nature nurture thing definitely worked for Dexter, who was
It
essentially
did.
a character who is human, who's just reduced human. Like he I've always said Dexter is a child. That's who
Mm-hmm.
he is. But
Yeah.
Hannibal's fully aware of what he's doing, like when he told the fat guy who loved the cheese, Frederick. His name was Frederick.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Fredericks getting offed. Weird.
Yeah. It's a bad name to have.
Yeah, especially in this show, unless you're Freddie Lounds, and I'm
Yeah.
so happy she's alive because
I know. And then, but I'm curious to see if once they get into Red Dragon territory, what they're gonna do with her. They already sent a faux Freddie Lounds down the street on a burning wheelchair, so it's kind of like, uh.
that would be the most ironic and like worst thing ever. Like she just dies like that every time.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know what I would do.
That was one of the okay. Since you brought that up, one of the weird things I thought about that is like, okay, this show is updated for the modern audience. In
Yeah.
Red Dragon, Freddie Lounds works at a newspaper,
Mm-hmm.
but in the TV show, she's a blogger.
Yeah.
Why does she have a parking space?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out. Like,
Like, does she have a day job that she told no one about, where she just has this? Did that happen to be a guy named Freddie Lounds, and he just rolled her down there like, hey?
why not? Yeah, I mean, maybe she just has some other position elsewhere when she kind of gets in trouble, or I don't know.
That
But
that could have been in her apartment. So, but I don't
good.
understand why her name would be on the parking spot. But
That was pretty hilarious, though. Like, look, see.
that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whatever they do for season 3, season 4, and hopefully season 4 is Red Dragon, um,
Hmm.
because that's been my favorite piece of Hannibal, my favorite piece of the Hannibal mythos for a
Yeah.
long time now, and so whatever they do with that, it's gonna be just freaking amazing, and
Hmm.
I just hope they stick it out. So predictions, what do you think season 3? What do you think's gonna happen? Where do you think
Oh
season 3
man.
is gonna take us?
Well, I definitely want to know more about what's going on with Bedelia, or, kind of Hannibal's. Like, does he have any kind of extended network, that they might be playing on, or other connections that he has that are pre-existing? Because this thing with Bedelia seems like there's so much more to it. But at the same time, I'm always reading these interviews and talking about, like, oh, this actor is like really busy, so we don't know how much we'll have them, and so you're wondering, like, okay, maybe this will be a part of it. But as far as the overarching season goes, I think that they kind of, the thing about the way that Brian is going about the show is they're kind of playing fast and loose with the canon. They're taking from it as much as possible, and it's very intertextual in that way.
Right,
But I'm kind of expecting, it's not really a clear prediction, I guess, but I'm just expecting a hodgepodge of things, and
right,
not like a meaningless, like, oh, we'll just take this because that was cool. And I mean, clearly this show it's good enough to where they don't need to do that, and I don't think that they could if they tried.
right, right.
So honestly, my brain is just like a blank slate at this point. Anything and everything is possible. But yeah, I'm kind of curious to see if there's going to be kind of a Hannibal network that's explored as far as other people that does he, I don't know if that makes any sense, but
No, no, it's interesting that you bring that up because I know you've been on top of these sort of things, and I have as well. Um, where earlier on the casting for season 2, Brian Fuller was potentially talking to David Bowie to play
Yes,
Hannibal's
and
uncle.
David Tennant too.
Yes. So I think this season we're probably going to see a little bit more of Hannibal's family life, because that's always
Yeah.
been the weird thing about this, is that does this guy have living relatives?
Mhm.
Are there more Lecters out there? And
Yeah.
I think in this season we will find that out, because
Mhm.
it was something that was played with a little bit for this season, and then I think this is going to come in to this season, to the third season as well.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, yeah, a lot of good ground covered in this podcast. I hope you guys have enjoyed listening to it. We definitely talked your ears off. Uh, Metaphorically speaking, not literally. Don't go swallowing ears. Um, and yeah, um, that'll be it. And hopefully we'll see you for season 3. Maybe with Paul if I can pin him down. And that will do it for me. You guys read the strangeverse.blogspot.com. I do Hannibal reviews every Saturday, or at least at my earliest convenience, which is usually Saturday, where you guys can check them out, and you can check them out. Emily, tell them about where you can find your stuff.
My stuff, well, my channel is M Mighty Sophia. So EM, the word mighty, and then Sofia. So that's kind of my central hub of activity. I have, of course, reviewed Hannibal. I've also done stuff like Bates Motel, Game of Thrones, and in the past, The Walking Dead, Dexter, Breaking Bad, you name it. I also do some music and a little bit of comedy stuff every once in a while. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Emily Sophia Smith, pretty much the way you think it would be spelled. And yeah, like mostly on my YouTube page, I have links to everything else. So that's kind of where you can get started.
Fantastic. And I love saying this, but you can always find her on Tumblr at iamthecruelone.tumblr, and I love
Yes.
that handle. I love that name. I am the cruel one.
I do too. I dare say I'm never gonna change it.
You shouldn't, because you are the cruel one. That will do it for us, and we will see you later. Bon appetit.